Right, hello everybody, and welcome to this talent talk. Today we're talking about recruitment transformation, what's changing and how do you adapt. We've got one heck of a panel of people that have joined us today. One's running late, and we're going to be putting him on screen in a minute. This is Danny. Stan has got such a busy life and such a busy office that he's actually still trying to find somewhere to get comfortable. So I'll let him get comfortable. And Simon, first, would you mind just introducing yourself? Tell us what you do.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can see and hear me here okay. So my name is Simon Rutter, and I am the Global Employer Brand and Communications Director here at Cada Pharmaceuticals. And we're a Japanese-based global pharmaceutical company. So I'm pleased to be here for my first talent talk, and excited to talk about recruitment transformation.
Cool. Thank you, Simon. Welcome. Shay?
Hi, everyone. My name's Shay, and I actually work at dunnhumby, and predominantly I've been really hired to kind of work on building and articulating a compelling employee value proposition for dunnhumby as it sort of revamped its strategy and brand, because it's got ambitious plans to grow into new markets and industries.
Cool. Okay. Stan, are you comfortable and you can hear us, etc.?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Do you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. So I'm responsible for business development at Vonk. I am getting a terrible echo still.
You think you can do it without the headphones? Is that going to work? Is that going to help?
I can see. I can try.
That works.
No, it's even worse. I'm going to try to get to log back in. I'm going to try to do something with the connection.
Okay. I think Danny, welcome. Okay, so what I've realized is we only have 4 of us on screen at the same time. So Danny, welcome. Do you want to just give us a quick intro?
What do you have to? What, an intro?
Yeah.
So Danny Hodgson from Foresight. We are a recruitment forecasting, workforce planning, hiring planning tool for recruiters and enterprise-wide organizations, helping them get a handle on their 3, 6, 9, 12 months recruitment hiring demand needs.
Cool. Okay. Shay, let's start with you.
Okay. Ladies first policy.
Ladies first. Yeah. So in the context of transformation, because you're doing it every day, tell us a little bit about the kind of main sort of objectives that an organization like dunnhumby or any other large employer would have around creating any kind of transformation. What are the main objectives, first of all? Yeah,
it's a good question. So first of all, as I mentioned earlier, dunnhumby is expanding into new markets and industries. And to get there, we're going to need to attract and retain top talent. If anyone's looked at the Glassdoor's job rankings report, what they'd probably notice or have read is that the top 2 most in-demand jobs in 2018 are data scientists and DevOps engineers. Now, what does that really mean for dunnhumby? That means that it's an incredible competitive job demographic, and that we're going to have to work very hard for our hires. And what we've recognized is that we're going to have to be much more aggressive in our recruitment marketing efforts, and as well start to focus much more on our employer brand. And our starting point really is building that EVP, employee value proposition, and trying to figure out what's our perception or what's the labor market's perception of our brand externally. So that's really our sort of starting point. And hence that's sort of really the beginning of the transformation. We are sort of evolving or pivoting to become a new company in a way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. Simon, in terms of, because I know that you've been going on a big journey, there's been a lot of change in Takeda. you want to just explain a little bit about the kind of key things, that the key again, objectives? What are you mainly trying to achieve?
Well, we're trying to truly become a global company, because for 230 odd years, we've been predominantly a Japanese company. So in the last 4 years, we've been on a real journey, very accelerated, to become a truly global company, with presence in emerging markets, presence in the US, presence all throughout Europe and North America. And what we've been doing as part of that is really three things. One is the global infrastructure, so the systems and processes that can underpin that technology, etc. The second is about having more of a global strategy and a global mission and a global vision. And then the third is having a really global mindset, so thinking globally, acting globally, and that has an impact on, you know, employer branding, has an impact on your talent mobility, your people strategy, everything. So it's about getting the company to really think globally. And what we're trying to achieve with that is that we're going into new areas. You know, we're going into therapy areas and certain areas within that, very specialist pharmaceutical care we haven't been in before. So we need different skills, we need different capabilities. And to attract those people, as Shay was saying, very competitive, and areas that we're not known in, we need to have a stronger presence, sorry, I should say, and we need to have a stronger employer brand. So we've got similar talent needs to what Shay was saying there. You know, we want data scientists, we want engineers, we want medical directors, and there's a skills shortage and there's a talent shortage. So we're really trying to, from an objective point of view, transform this company into a truly global company that is going to be sustainable in the future. So to do that, we have to think globally, and we have to think differently about how we attract that talent that's going to take us to the next level.
Okay, so quick question for everybody. What are the kind of main common trends that are meaning that organizations need to transform today from a recruitment perspective? What are the main trends?
Should I jump back in?
Yeah, go for it.
From our point of view, I would say it's definitely a skills shortage. You know, if you look at the skills that we need, everything from sales, from R&D to market access, medical affairs, and now new areas, so data scientists is just one example. There just isn't the skills out there for the demand. So we've got to be, you know, really transforming our business to make sure that we are differentiating ourselves. For those coming out of the universities or that are there in the market with that experience, we are offering them a really compelling reason to come and join a company that probably outside of Japan and the US, to be fair, they've probably not heard of Takeda. So why would they come and join us? Why would they associate us with being an employer of choice where they can grow their career, where they can develop their skills? So the skills shortage is really driving a lot of that transformation, particularly given we're going into new areas. So, you know, we need to make sure that we are aware and present for those candidates that are in those areas.
Yeah. So if I could jump in, Adam, I think to add to what Simon is saying, I think in this day and age, candidates have become much more informed. In fact, I think there's a term called the informed candidate. What that essentially means is they've got options. And they've got choices, so they don't necessarily, you know, have to work for you. So you've got to, you know, sort of, you know, create a storyline around why they should come and work for you. Create something that's, you know, compelling to them and that they can relate to. So they're just much more informed. They're going on social media, you know, Glassdoor. They're you know, got a very strong online presence. And, you know, they can quickly, you know, learn a lot about your organization and tap into their social networks to find out more. So they've just got a lot of options in this day and age. So I think we're all competing for the same talent pool. And I think what's going to differentiate different organizations is creating something different, creating something unique, and trying to communicate that to the outside world.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So everybody's got, there are more different ways that people can make money than there ever were in the past. And progressively more humans are rejecting the concept of full-time permanent employment. So in order to get your arms around what a talent pipeline looks like, it's a bigger challenge than it ever has been. Danny, what do you think are the big sort of trends that are creating a necessity to transform for employers that you're working with?
So I think it's a definite disconnect between. So I think HR transformation starts by being connected to the business, and the reason why a lot of HR transformations actually become a necessity is because those HR functions or recruitment functions are not connected to the actual overall business goal and visions at the top level. So then ultimately what we're faced by is, like Simon said, we've got huge talent shortages. Everybody's looking for the same skill set. We've now got to revamp all of our EVP strategies and employer branding strategies. And I don't want this to go into a sales pitch, but ultimately, the business knew about these kind of transformations, these projects, 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the line. But unfortunately, they don't feed into the HR function with relevant timings for us to develop great recruitment strategies, more diverse and inclusive campaigns. Everything is kind of reactive. So everybody claims to be wanting to be proactive. But ultimately, proactivity starts by connecting the business functions to the HR function. That's kind of what, for me, that's where it's all born out of. So to answer your initial question about kind of why do I see HR, or what's fundamental for HR transformation, is connecting all of the different business units together with HR kind of being at the center, and all of that intelligence flowing into one central pot where we as a function can make those informed decisions of how do we start attracting the right talent, what talent do we physically need. So all of these talent shortages that everybody's scurrying around trying to attract right now, so the data scientists, the DevOps engineers, that's kind of what we need, 1 to 4 years. But what does 4 to 10 years look like? Yeah. So are we always going to be in this reactive world where we're constantly being told by the business, basically we just pivoted, we need to start attracting X, Y, and Z? Well, actually, if we're connected to the business, we can make those decisions for 3, 6, 9, 12 months, which will also then help steer organisation transformation across a 3, 5, 10 year as well. So it's about being connected. And how do we as a HR and resourcing and talent acquisition function become connected to all corners of the business?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. What about technology? I mean, technology is changing the way that organizations are structured. And I mean, I was doing a talk at a school yesterday where it was a group of 16-year-olds. There was about 100 16-year-olds. And I said, whatever job your parents have been doing as a career, probably don't follow them because their jobs are unlikely to exist. It was a school where most of them, their parents are going to be doctors and lawyers and accountants. And half of those jobs are going to be automated for sure. So I didn't want to make a lot of doom and gloom, but employers are changing the way they're structured today as a result of that. I can only see that accelerating. I'm wondering if that's something that you think as well.
It is. Yeah, the whole landscape is changing, and it's changing faster than ever, which is both exciting but also quite scary for people who are doing roles that might not exist. So an organisation, they have to adapt. And from a HR standpoint, one of the biggest reasons we see HR functions not adapting is because they're kind of restricted, right? So if we think of any of the functions, so if we take IT, who are going through a massive transformation project, huge laptop, reprogram out of the business, they're seen as experts within their organisation. So they would not seek permission to go out to the entire business and say, look guys, everybody's going to get a new laptop. We'd love to understand what your thoughts are on the spec of the laptop you need. That doesn't happen, does it? If finance wants to roll out a new process, they don't seek permission from everyone in the business, say, what process would we like to see? They roll it out and we truly adhere to what processes. I think HR are not seen as HR tech experts. Yeah. So we're not allowed to kind of roll out new tech, new processes, new policies, which will drive probably similar business advantages than functions like IT and finance will drive. And whether it's because HR has become quite stagnant over the last 5, 10 years, or it's just not a function where we've always been tech savvy, I think we kind of need to make that giant leap forward in becoming kind of tech experts. It's another hat we have to wear in order to drive best in breed practices across the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon, from a sort of stakeholders perspective, who are the most important people within a business like yours?
Very good question. We've got a lot. From my point of view in employer branding, obviously we've got to work very closely with corporate communications, every single level, so global, regional and local. Obviously working very closely with HR and all different sub-departments within HR, compensation and benefits, etc., talent management. Obviously it's working very closely with my key team, so talent acquisition and also the people in HR doing resourcing and recruiting. But it's also obviously the hiring managers themselves and making sure that you're having, and shadowing those discussions that talent acquisition are having with the business, so you can hear, what is it that they're looking for from a talent perspective? What kind of story are they telling candidates when they come in? What do they need to make sure that story is more consistent? So they're the key stakeholders for us. But I mean, I've done so many presentations all over the world to pretty much every part of the business, from leadership down to local HR on a tactical plant manufacturing level. So I'd say when you're doing something at a global level and something as important as employer branding, you've got to get everybody behind it, to different degrees, but the whole organization has to be moving as one. So I'd say my stakeholder simply is the business.
Yeah, okay. Stan, I'm sorry, I tried to get you in and out a couple of times there, but tell us a bit about what it is that you do, and what does Vonk do? Because you're talking about effectively, it's almost a digital transformation that you're trying to enable companies to achieve.
Yeah, Vonk uses data and predictive analytics to help companies reach the right talent online and fuel applications by implementing marketing principles and leveraging some really interesting technology. And to add to everything that's been said right now, I think that there's a big discrepancy within organizations, whether they are small or large scale, between the people that are actually fueling the change and want to adopt and feel like they are really agile to start experimenting and doing things, and people that are more conservative. The people that want to change are in the minority. I think that's a really intrinsic human behavior. It transcends HR. I see it in marketing and sales as well. I see it in finance, as Danny said. I see it in all sectors that the people intrinsically do not want to change, because changing up basically is scary. I think there were studies that showed that change triggers all these defense mechanisms in the human brain. When you come around and you say, hey guys, remember how we've been doing this for the last 40 years? Well, we're on this sort of fourth industrial revolution. It's time to do things different. When you make it that big, I think a lot of people just get really defensive and then hold back change.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And obviously we're living in the middle of this. So do we think objectively that change is happening in the workplace faster than it ever has had?
Absolutely.
Simon? Absolutely. I completely agree with Stan. But I think the issue is that sometimes you're trying to move an organization of thousands of different people. That can take a long time to do, because you've got to get every single person on board. So I think while there's an external, forces, technology and other things that are changing so quickly, actually inside an organization, it can take a long time for that to, there's a big lag between where the technology, where some of the other external forces that are driving change outside the business, how they're actually being adopted and embedded inside the business. So I think there is still a lag. People talk about the pace of change, but actually sometimes, and I've seen a lot of research that says it actually taking longer nowadays to get things done in business, because of the number of stakeholders you need to involve, because of the amount of change that's going on. And as Stan said, change is a difficult thing. So you need to manage it. You need to get people bought in, but they need to feel that. So I think while we need to obviously embrace change, we need to acknowledge that it is a difficult thing for a lot of people. And therefore, when you're talking to companies, you're sometimes trying to, turn around the oil tanker. So that's something that you need to really bear in mind when you're embarking on anything like an employer brand or an EVP, because it's a big change for companies.
Yeah, do you know something that's really interesting? Because actually, I think people absolutely choose more now than ever. I think they choose who they work for based on, will I be able to actually make things happen?
Yeah.
If I work for a certain organization, and to an extent it's to do with the size of the organization, to another extent it's to do with what the culture is like and the structures and the kind of processes and how regulated the industry is and that kind of thing. But I mean, I don't think there's a chance that I could ever work for another multinational, well, almost any multinational corporation again, because I would be too frustrated with having to, well, in my case, ask anybody for any permission to do anything, but you kind of need to do it, I guess. And I think that's. I mean, I know from people I know for a fact they've gone from one organization to another organization because they know they'll be able to make things happen in this other place. Stan, from a kind of recruitment perspective, there are, I mean, in terms of what you do, I'm guessing that there are other business functions that are regularly involved, like particularly marketing, but possibly technology teams as well. Is that right?
Always, really. There's always I think Simon can actually add to that very well as well, but there's always a stakeholder map that needs to be made, as well as a stakeholder matrix, by really dividing someone's interest into a certain subject and in the individual's influence, and then deciding based on those what type of management strategy you will uphold to help these people in their transformation process. And we've been using the word process a lot. I also like to use the word system. I think that change should be approached as a system, and there are many proven management methods out there on the market, from the business to consumer side, lean startup, value proposition design, business model canvassing, and I strongly believe that it's about some of these key principles that you find there. So trying to validate the highest, the biggest assumption at the lowest risk possible, for example. And that usually means having an idea, breaking it down, finding the right people, with the right skill set for that specific idea. And even when you're working in a really with or for a really large company, it's still possible that way to acquire some, generate and capture some relevant data. And again, that's a quote by Simon, but that will help you to shift the discussion from opinions to actual facts. And I think that's something that can really fuel change and make it much more agile and fun for everyone who's involved, instead of having 45 emails with all these different stakeholders in CC going around. Everybody got trapped in one of those someday, and then you're looking back 2 months later, and how much have we really progressed? Nothing. We are still in some kind of meta, some kind of high level discussion there, instead of just starting small and generating data. So that's something that I see a lot in our field. So get back to the stakeholders. It's tech, it's finance, it's hiring managers, it's recruiters, it's HR, it's the whole lot. You name it, and depending on the specific recruitment need, there will be a lot of people involved.
I think if I can chime in, Adam, just adding to the conversation, when it's worth talking about what is the resistance to change, where does it come from, and why does it happen? And I think what I've generally seen, or when I think about how organizations are kind of like currently structured, they've been structured and designed to not really change deeply and proactively. They're generally designed more around routinization, discipline, and efficiency. So by itself, the very nature of how organizations are designed doesn't allow for that change to happen deeply. And that really means there's a mismatch between the pace of change that happens in the external environment and the pace of change that can actually happen internally within the organization. So I think that's one of the reasons why it becomes very difficult to change within a company on an organizational level. And I also think it's about mindset. So sometimes it's about, people fearing change, being threatened about the unknown, being a bit risk averse. And because there's just simply too much on the line, there's too much at stake. And, in my own personal experience, it's about probably talking to them about the possibilities of change, what can actually be rather than what could go wrong.
Yeah, Shay, what are the sort of most important tech, or the most useful kind of techniques and tactics for making transformation happen?
Yeah, so I think I touched on one of them, and that is about trying to create a mind shift change or a mindset change, and that is about talking about what's possible. I also think change really, it should be supported by leadership. So the support does come from the top and the drive does come from the top, but change doesn't happen necessarily from that level. It actually happens from the middle out. So look at all those people who are doing the change and coming to work every day, and empower them to make the change. So I think that's very important. So thinking about where change actually happens, it happens in the middle out, not necessarily just at the top. I also think it's definitely about keeping things simple. Most change initiatives fail. We all know that. And I think generally because it's such a turbulent environment, especially in the last couple of years, as this pace of technology has hit everybody, I think we're suffering all from change fatigue. We're a bit just tired. So we don't want these complicated processes for change management. We're all looking for something simple. So my advice would be, if you're embarking upon any sort of transformation process, keep it simple, make sure that it happens at the level where actually people do the work, so from the middle outwards. And I also think it's definitely worth thinking that change, you can't make change happen to people. You don't do it to people. You actually create change with people. So it's something you just can't do to them. And then, of course, trying to change that mindset. So, there's a couple of my kind of like pearls of wisdom around change management.
Simon, you have made a lot of enhancements to the way things happen at Takeda. How have you prioritized? Because you've had you've got quite a long program that you've been going through. How have you prioritized the things that you? How have you prioritized the things that you've that you've done first?
Well, I think to build on what Shay's saying, we had a narrative for our vision, our mission, and our values. So we were able to align our EVP with that quite nicely. But I think what we also needed to do in terms of prioritization was, I think the other side of change is you do need to create a burning platform. You do need to go armed with data. You do need to show the business, look, if we carry on in this way, we're not going to be sustainable. This is the context, the changing environment that we're working within. So what we've done within that is say, well, actually, okay, from a prioritization point of view, what do we really need to do? And given what I said earlier about the skills shortage, we knew, therefore, that yes, the programs and the processes were important. Yes, the infrastructure was important. Yes, the tech's important. But if we don't have a consistent employer brand that's deployed in a very consistent way on the channels that we really prioritize, where we know the candidates are, then nothing else is going to matter. If we don't get them to start thinking about Takeda, to start considering us in ways they haven't done before, if we don't have that differentiation, then everything else is kind of like, we can build the ATS, we can change the tech stack, etc. But if they're not coming to us, if they're not intrigued about us, if they're not excited by, oh, hang on a minute, this is a company doing something different, I believe in them, I'd like to know more about their culture, their values, then nothing else is really matters. So that's how we were able to sort of build the business case and take the data and say, look, we know that the brand awareness isn't where it should be in a lot of our markets. We know that they're, falling out of the stage for these reasons. So it was we were able to go with data, and we were able to link that to the strategic objectives of the business, as I said at the start, which was we need to get the talent in to transform this business. So that's why employer branding was really put front and center, because we were able to say, if we get that right, everything else will flow from there. So we've been on as you say, we've had a lot of change. We've had to manage it. We've had to accept sometimes that, there's been things that haven't gone as well as we might have liked. So we've had to change and adapt. And as long as you're learning, then I think that's good. But employer branding was an AVP when you're trying to become a global company for the first time, and essentially you're rewriting your story, then employer branding is just naturally front and center. Now, getting the organization to understand that's, been my job and my team and many other people. But employer branding as a prioritization when you're trying to transform a business is absolutely essential.
I like the fact, Simon, that you use the word business case there, because that's another thing that I see a lot in the talent acquisition and HR space that is lacking. I think that talent acquisition professionals and HR professionals are having a really hard time to quantify the value that they deliver. And when all is said and done, that's what the board, the shareholders, the owners are looking at, the bottom line. And unfortunately, those are numbers with some kind of monetary symbol in front of them, whether it's euros or pounds or dollars. And I think there's a big opportunity for HR and talent acquisition to learn to shift the way that leadership looks at them from being a cost center to actually a value creation function. And the way to do that is the business case. And business cases always start with an objective, with a time frame, and you fill in activities and you find out, you benchmark, we are doing this now. You need to come up with some kind of tangible KPI, whether it's your cost per hire or your fill rate or your time to fill. But what I like even better, because these are all pretty short-term KPIs, what I really like is in sales, we talk about lifetime value, customer lifetime value. How can we develop a customer? What is the quality of the customer that comes in, and then channel that back to all of our customer acquisition efforts? Well, why not do that with employees as well? Find out what the value is of bringing in well. Sales is quite easy. How long does it take them to onboard them? How much money do they bring in each month, each quarter, each year? How can we develop them into managers? But also for software engineering, what is the cost of getting this application to run smoother? Or UX design, how much more money do we actually make if we have a better UX process in place? Or business casing that, learning how to business case that, I think is a big opportunity for talent acquisition and HR. And here comes the paradoxical thing. I don't think they should really be the financial experts in that whole story, but they, we get back to the stakeholder map, they should go to the CFO and get a couple of hours from their financial colleagues that can put that into a nice formula and a nice framework where they provide the input, they provide the case, the experiment that they want to run, but then their financial stakeholders will help them put that into a nice financial framework. How does the rest think about this idea?
So there's businesses that I work with where they absolutely, they go and make use of finance to help them to create business cases, because it's not something that as a recruiters or HR people, it's not something that we've necessarily been trained in. And it's actually quite a specialist kind of discipline to be able to create reports and create business cases that a board's going to sign off. So I think that it is something that people need help with. I think that is Shay, that is, I'm guessing, something that is within the kind of methodology of a transformation profession.
Yeah, that's true. And to echo what you're saying, Adam, I agree with you. I think if we look at recruitment marketing, it's a very different, well, not necessarily very different, but it's a bit of a different discipline than talent acquisition in a way. So I think it requires a different skill set. And you're absolutely right. You've got a lot of talent acquisition folks out there who don't have that skill set. It also requires different systems and processes within an organization. So I think it's just not enough to be ATS dependent. which a lot of companies are. So it's really about looking and understanding at what is recruitment marketing, what is its value, and why has it taken center stage in this day and age. There's a reason why, and a lot of it is because of, back to our initial conversation, how we kicked off this discussion, it is because of a skill shortage. It does require or necessitate an organization to sort of differentiate itself from its competitors, because candidates have a lot of options these days. So it's just a question, how would you, this is a question out to everyone in the group, how would you sort of define recruitment marketing, and why do you think, aside from the reasons I've given, has it taken center stage? And a follow-up question is, how do you introduce it into an organization? Because we're currently at dunnhumby going through that process. It's one of the things I'd love to bring to dunnhumby, a recruitment marketing strategy as well as a recruitment marketing system. And maybe Stan, you can chime in, because you'd have undoubtedly faced this challenge when you go out there, obviously trying to talk about Vonk.
Yeah, absolutely. So you start on the high level, explaining that it's really strange, actually, that in a world where we can basically find anything we need in an instant, you can't name it and you can Google it, and we are consuming all the time. And I'm not just mean purchasing. We are consuming information all the time. We are, in essence, consumers all the time. People watching this right now are consuming this information. So then why is it, if it's so easy to consume information and to purchase products and services, why is it that when we start to search for employment-related content, suddenly we're not called consumers anymore, we are called candidates, and we come into this really rigid bureaucratic world where we have to log in and leave data behind, and I don't know what else to do. So that's usually the question I start with, and people start thinking, yeah, you're right, that is kind of strange. And then the second step is to start explaining that it's not about just having a job anymore. Everyone has a job opportunity for you if you have any sorts of talent. It's much more about finding the right people to fit your culture, which goes hand in hand with your brand. And that's how you slowly but surely start to position that into the mindset of leadership. And then the last part is, well, how do you connect them with with the people you want to attract? And it's really intricately getting to know them, instead of just pushing your jobs, your job opportunities into the market, taking a step back, really researching the people you try to attract, building these archetypes called personas, and from that, creating the right messaging to engage them, and distributing that content in the right place. And I think that's a nice heads up for Danny. I think that requires a strategic approach. It's not just like it used to be, just sourcing, picking up the phone and pushing an opportunity on someone, the same as used to happen in the business to business or business to consumer sales. Really, it's all about establishing awareness of brand first, and for that you need a plan. You need to know who you will need, not today or tomorrow. I would even like to make the argument that if you are, if you already lost that battle, please just go with a headhunter and an agency, and free yourself up to invest time in a good recruitment forecast, in planning who you need to attract, do the research, create the persona, and go into the flow that I just explained. How do you feel about that, Daddy? Because I set you up pretty much, but I think that's where it all starts with planning.
It really does. So I think as talent acquisition becomes more and more sophisticated, it's looking to all the different arms of a business that we currently have. So we're learning so much from marketing, we're learning so much from communications, we're learning so much from sales, etc. And it's about just pulling in the different aspects that all the other functions are doing bloody excellent. And one of the things that if you're a sales and marketing led organization, you have a massive supply chain, these guys are predicting and planning mass consumer purchases across millions and billions of products on a minute-by-minute basis. So if these guys can predict consumer bases, how the hell can we not start predicting our talent demands, right? These guys, so look at how supply chain do it. They don't just wait till the customer is at the till and the guy from Sainsbury's rings them and says, quick manufacturing, produce a can of Coke. It's like, this is predicted through years in advance, yeah? So if these cars can do it about consumer purchasing behavior, which is so much harder, why the hell can't we do it about predicting our own talent needs? And that's kind of an analogy that we use to pick up on the business case earlier. Yeah, we help organizations all the time constructing business cases which keep getting passed up and up and up the chain. And what we quickly realized is the top 10% of heads of resourcing and the top 10% of HRDs, they give a shit about how much money this is going to save organizations, and they think, bloody hell, I've got to act on it. The bottom 90% don't give a shit. Yeah, they think it's not their money, it's not their budget, it's oh great, we overspent this year again, let's try better next year. So what we started to do is finding out where the pain is in the business, right? So when people were interested in buying our product and they'd say, Danny, this is fantastic, I need it in my life, but I need to go to my boss and get it signed off. We'd say, don't go to your boss, go to your main stakeholder and say, John, Susie, I've just seen a piece of tech that is going to help me be proactive, servicing your recruitment needs. It's going to take you 10, 15 minutes every 3 months to do it. Are you interested? And when they're like, yes, they march them back into the HR office and demand why the hell they've not been using technology to provide a better service. So we're almost directing people away from going up that chain of command and finding the actual pain point within the business, which is people out there trying to recruit for people in their teams and saying, look, by using tech, it's going to mean less interviews, it's going to mean less empty chair time, it's going to mean less candidates coming through the pipeline, which means more targeted campaigns, which means less candidates to approach, which means our employer branding gets better because the perception of our business goes up. Everything starts by having, and I won't swear, a plan. Literally, it is as simple as that. So if organizations with huge supply chains, finance departments doing it every single minute of their working life, why, as a HR function, can we not plan?
And why do you think so?
Because I say talent acquisition is relatively immature function. We've only been around for, say, 10, 15 years. Supply chain started off with Excel planning docs 15 years ago and then thought, hang on a minute, there's a better way, let's invest in technology. So the exact same thing, why don't we track our candidates via Excel? Because some smart person thought, that's a waste of time, let's spend a little bit of money on an ATS, which is going to free up all the recruiters' time. Yeah, that's why, is because they're not, Shay said it earlier, which really summed it up beautifully. People are more bothered about what can go wrong rather than what can be. And once we can start to find more people that are bothered about what can be and focus on them, the rest will naturally follow.
Nice. Simon, were you about to cover Adam's questions there?
Yeah, no, I think, employer brand, coming back to Shay's questions, this isn't something new. I've been doing EVPs for over 10 years. They were called something else then. But I think what's changed, there's three main things that I think are changing things and changing things rapidly. First of all, I think it's the rise of the gig economy. So people have got more choice and they're making a proactive decision to work flexibly, but they're also taking a real choice about what type of company do they want to work for, where do they want to work. And linked to that is, in the last I think it's only really 5 to 10 years, there's been an explosion in this idea of people wanting to work for companies with a purpose. They want to know why they're coming into work each day. They want to know that that company has got something higher than just making profit. So it's very important, and people are using company websites, they're using employer branding, they're using Glassdoor and all these other sites to understand, okay, does that, what is that purpose? What is that mission? What's the company culture and environment like? And when I walk in the door, is that actually the reality? So is there a gap there? And how much am I actually going to be able to really feel that when I work for that company? So that focus on purpose never really used to be there 20, 30 years ago. When I talked to my parents, that wasn't something that they were considering. But it's not just a millennial thing, but it is very important to people. They're looking at what type of company do I want to work for? Do I want to be involved with? You know, people spend more time than ever at work. So they want to make sure that that time is aligned with their own values. And I think the third thing is that there's become, paradoxically, a lack of trust in politicians, in business, in organizations in general. So corporate brands have become weaker across the board. I'm talking across industries here. So I think people are more inclined to look at, well, okay, from a company point of view, if we can't sell the company, how can we sell it in a different way, which is employer branding? But it's also from a candidate's point of view, they're not going to necessarily go on your corporate website. They're not going to believe it. They're going to want to hear from people who work for the company. That's why referrals are so important. And they're going to go on, as Shay said at the start, you know, they're going to look at Glassdoor and all these other, you know, sites that you can go on to find out on the money reviews. So there's also that kind of lack of trust and breakdown in kind of communication between corporate brands and corporations and customers and people out there in the marketplace. So candidates are going, well, actually, I'm going to go and ask someone who knows someone who works there. And so what organizations can control to an extent is the employer brand. So how do you talk about your company as a place to work? And then how do you also empower your employees to do that? Because the corporate brand and what you do is becoming less important. It's why you do it and what that means for someone coming to work
and
for you.
I love that last point also, Simon, that you said, empower your employees as well, because a rising star in the whole talent acquisition space actually stems from the employees, and it's called employee advocacy. You know, basically turning your employees into ambassadors, something that has been going on in the business to consumer market for a long time already. You know, when consumer brands find out someone is a really popular Instagram and they are using their brand, they will fuel that. And the same way, if we would empower our employees more to not just, you know, through referral programs and incentives, but just, you know, really cater to the pride that they have to work for a specific company. And there's a lot of terrain to be won there to basically fill up your future pipeline. And that's another thing that Daniel already touched upon. We need to move away from the fact to think that we need to, you know, connect with and close a candidate right away or within a time frame of a few weeks. This could even take a year, maybe even 2 years. You know, the people that you engage right now that find your company really interesting. I can name a few of those companies that I think are doing some beautiful things in the market, like a Benify or a Dynamic Signal and employer branding. Well, I can name a few companies that I would never apply to right now, but 5 years, what they are doing is so interesting. I'm still following them, actually. You know, so I'm still connected to their newsletters, seeing how they are developing themselves. I think that's a really big opportunity to nurture actually your candidate pipeline. And then once you get people in who are already excited, make them even more excited and make them proud to share stories about your company at parties or speak at events or do that sort of stuff and really become the company's ambassadors.
You want me to pick up Adam's last question about foresight, transforming everything as a result? So we see when we work with organizations and we physically say, look, here over the next 12 months, here is a list or a talent demand need list for the next 12 months. Two transformations happen instantly. The talent acquisition team instantly transforms because ultimately they are handed a list of what talent they're going to need across what disciplines, and ultimately what we see is that TA team is not fit for purpose and it's not set up to help organizations transform and bring in certain skill sets. So what it normally flushes out is digital transformation projects. So suddenly we need to hire 150 Java, Python, whatever engineers. Well, actually, we don't have the capability to do that internally. So do we suddenly hand out 150 roles to an agency and pay kind of £1.5 million for the privilege? Or do we start attracting the right relevant recruiters with that skill set to do it ourselves? And then the other long-term transformation, by handing the talent demand needs of the next 12 months, it allows organizations where they do have a clear 3-5 year picture of what their organization looks like, it allows them to start slowly moving in that direction. So instead of getting 2.5 years down the line and thinking, shit, we missed the boat here. We need to do a mass transformation, a mass restructure, and a mass org design change because we haven't slowly been making those decisions because we didn't have the data to do it. So the data that people are craving is, what are we physically going to hire over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months? Because the decisions that it impacts, what tech do we need? What ATS do we need? What does the TA team look like? What recruitment marketing products do we need? What does our employer branding look like for those new disciplines that we're never going to have? Every single decision an organization should be making should be based on having a foundation of what your talent demand need is over the next 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months. Anyone else?
Mic drop. No, absolutely. And taking small steps. I mean, behavior doesn't change in an instant. Shay already said it earlier. You can't force change on people because they will become defensive and they'll be extremely counterproductive. So anytime the leadership, forces a technology or a principle or, I'm also a big fan of continuous appraisals, real-time appraisals and that sort of stuff, because it can be really valuable for a company to move away from just doing these once a half year type of appraisals and not having any data to do them on, because you'll be as good as your last success or the last complaint that came in about you. But the problem is you can support this type of mindset with great technology, but if no one's using it, then it won't work. So still, I believe it's making small teams, doing it department by department. I think if you look at your tech, Danny, obviously you can involve every hiring manager from the get-go, but why not just take the IT department first, or just the sales department, or the UX department, or finance, whatever, and where the biggest pain is or the biggest need is, for example. And not even maybe the whole department. No, if there's 5 hiring managers, take one and his or her hiring need, and move from there, and then set the objective on the mid, long term, and on the short term. I think that's how you can make change seem less challenging, less big. Break it down, put in a system in place that will induce a lot of moments of celebration, because those create endorphins instead of all these defense mechanisms. Celebrate a lot in between. Oh, great, we created a persona. Let's drink on that. Oh, great, we did our first campaign. Let's raise another glass, without becoming alcoholics in the process, obviously. But make sure you celebrate the small things as well, and then people will really get into it. And what will happen? They will start talking to other people inside the organization about it as well, or people will come to them like, "Hey, I see you're doing something new. How's it working out for you?" And if it's going well, then obviously people will want it too, because then the whole different psychological things comes into play. Is that they want to belong to to the winning team. So I guess that's a really good one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things that we kind of try and live by here is focus on progression, not perfection. So whenever there's a change program, or whether there's a new process, or whether there's a new way of doing things, everybody always tries to get it absolutely 100% perfect, focusing on what it should look like at the end goal. And it shouldn't be. It should be just do it a little bit, start small. Yeah, you'll do it faster. Just pick an area, roll it out, learn, evolve, and then repeat. And it's a case of focus on progression, not perfection.
Yeah, that's what Jeff Bezos has been saying. He says he either wins or he learns. And if you can learn from small investments, with small risk, what does it matter if it fails? At least you've learned that that won't work on the large scale either. And these little steps can bring you to something obviously really big eventually. And if you see that it does work, that's the moment to roll it out over the whole organization. The cool thing is you don't need big, necessarily need big acquisitions or big budgets for that anyway these days anymore, because most of the products we're talking about, or most of the processes, are subscription based or quite low threshold to roll out. It's just about getting people to make that first step and see those first results. I see there's a question for Shay, by the way.
Oh, say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. What would a communication plan look like? I think the answer to that question depends on what kind of change you're trying to do or what transformation program you're trying to implement. But I think the first thing is definitely sort of articulating a vision and explaining to the company and creating a compelling reason why you want to make that change in the first place. So it's about really trying to find a sense of purpose for that change. What's the reason why you're trying to change it? And then a vision as well. What is the end state? The vision actually crystallizes what that sense of purpose for change is. So it gives people sort of very tangible results or a tangible picture of what you're trying to accomplish when you get to that change or when you try to do that change. And I think a third thing is what I think it was Peter Drucker that termed this phrase, and he's called it the discipline of abandonment. So I think it's about learning to let go as well. So trying to somehow incorporate that into your communication plan. The reasons why you have to let go of things, why certain things and processes don't actually serve their purpose as well. Also about trying to possibly in your communication plan, break it down to simple steps, something very much along those lines. So those are sort of some of the things that I'd probably incorporate into a communication plan.
We're waiting for Adam now to introduce us, but yeah, beautiful. I think vision is important as well. I think every change really happens with an internal stakeholder, and that, it may happen on the outside, but it never comes from the outside. Whether it's leadership or it's just someone in the organization, and as you said, in the middle, that's just sick of doing things the same way. You need to find these people as well, and they really do have to be visionary and be able to explain and articulate why it's relevant to start a project. And finding those people can sometimes even happen outside of the discipline that you're trying to change. I've been making a big argument, I think Simon has as well, to let talent acquisition managers speak with the marketing managers of a company. I mean, 15 minutes of putting these people inside a room together, and they both come out buzzing like, wow, why haven't we been doing this before? Both of them will probably think that, and there's more ways to trigger that as well.
How do we get Adam back in?
He needs to pay his internet bill. He's reconnecting, I think. No.
Have you gone to the gym? Okay, so Adam sent a message saying, "Hi, Adam here from Candidate ID. No idea how I locked myself out of the talent talk, but I'd love to thank Stan, Danny, Simon and Shay for giving us all some brilliant insights and things to think about. Thanks so much to everyone for signing in." Smiley face.
All right, so that's it.
So, there you go. And I'd just like to add thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Same to you. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
And see you next time, Adam says.
Absolutely.